You are listening to the Bright Life Podcast, all about ways to stay inspired, chase your dreams, and find more gratitude in the highs and lows of the journey. I'm your host, Jessica Johnson. I'm a business owner, a part-time digital nomad, a self-growth junkie, a believer in other big-hearted women, and am all about sharing tips, tricks, lessons learned, and encouragement so we can all live our biggest, brightest lives. You ready? Let's do this. Hi, gorgeous. Welcome to today's podcast episode. I think this episode is going to be especially helpful if you are in a season of feeling like a door has closed that you weren't expecting, feeling frustrated that you didn't get something that you thought you wanted, or maybe you have this master plan that should be working and you're pushing and yet it's not working. This episode, I hope to give you so much encouragement and peace around the closed doors that happen to all of us, and to show you in some ways that they are valuable and they're actually going to help you get exactly where you want to go, or to even somewhere better. So I have experienced closed doors in my life. And when I mean a closed door, I'm thinking of those situations where it just seems like no matter what you try, something is not working. Like whether it's something you're pushing up against, something energetically is off, something you may want really bad, but it's just not working. I consider those kind of closed doors. And the open doors, of course, are the opportunities that you take and they just keep moving and things flow effortlessly. And in our human existence, there's a mix of both, right? And obviously the open doors often feel better because who likes to be rejected or not get something they want? But I just want to shine a light on those closed doors in this episode and hopefully help you see them with a fresh perspective that's going to feel a lot better and help you feel like you can accept them when they happen, trusting that there is something better out there for you. Okay, so here are a few things that help me and I hope they encourage you as well. The first thing that I try and remember with closed doors is that redirection is protection. I can't remember where I first heard that, but I love that phrase, redirection is protection. So you never know what is behind that closed door that may not be for you. I had a friend who recently went through training for the police academy, and in the end, they didn't get accepted into it. And as devastating as that felt because of all the time and effort and energy and physical sacrifice and lack of sleep and everything that went into applying for that, at the end of the day, we were having this conversation and I thought, you never know what this could be protecting you from. Maybe there would have been a situation where you would have been hurt. You never know, right? Like what a closed door is actually potentially protecting you from, if not redirecting you to. So even if it's not like your safety is at risk in a situation, you never know what better thing it could be redirecting you to. Maybe this is life's way of saying, yes, you could have had this thing, but there's something that would be so much better for you and you just can't see it in this moment, but I've got to close this door to redirect you over there. So I've seen that in my own life. I'm sure you can think of situations in yours, whether it's relationship maybe that you really wanted. Think about our younger relationships where the first person we ever dated, it's like, oh, we probably wanted that relationship so badly. And then in hindsight, you're like, oh, I'm so glad that the person that I loved at 16 isn't the person I ended up with. I would have never suited the person that I am today, right? Like there's so many situations like that in relationships or first jobs, businesses, colleges we wanted to get into, anything like that, that if you can apply it to your situation today and just remember that even though it hurts sometimes, that redirection really could be protection. I was reading this beautiful quote from Krista Williams, who is another podcaster. She is on the Almost 30 podcast, and she said, quote, "You can have your list, or you can have the miracles and surprises that God has planned for you." And whether you believe in God, whether you call it the universe or life or whatever your term is that feels good in your soul, feel free to substitute that in. But I thought that is a great way to put it. You can have your list and the things that you want, Or you can have something so much better, which is often what life can deliver to you, even beyond your wildest imagination, if you can let go of the grip on your list that's as good as you think it can possibly be, or that's the exact situation that you want. It might not even be the right situation for you. There may be a situation that's so much bigger and better, and like God can dream such a bigger vision for you than maybe you can dream even for yourself. And if that's the case, can you let go of that list? Can you let go of exactly how you think it should be? Because maybe part of the reason that you are seeing a closed door and you are not getting what you want is because there is better out there for you. There is a miracle or a surprise on the way, or there's a way that it can happen that's beyond what you can even fathom in your way of doing things. And so I know that's been true in situations in my life where I'm like, it has to happen this way. And that's the only way I can see from my vantage point here. But if I can release the how, it comes through in a way I could have never imagined, and yet it's better. So I think that could be true for you as well. But again, if that helps you, it's that quote of you can have your list, or you can have the miracles and surprises that God has planned for you. Another thing that really helps me is to remember that oftentimes an experience that I have, even if it eventually leads to a closed door, often gives me the skills and setup for the next opportunity or open door. So for example, with business, my first businesses, they didn't become the businesses that I would keep for my entire life. They had some closed doors. They had some things that I couldn't just push through and figure out in the way that I wanted to, or the way that continued to feel good. And yet, those businesses were exactly the things that gave me the skills to achieve success and to find my true path in future businesses. And I could have never done that without this practice ground of figuring out, how do I do marketing? How do I do sales? How do I run a business? How do I create a website? How do I sell products? How do I do it in a way that feels good? And so you kind of learn things along the way, but if you don't have those closed door moments, you kind of can't get that retrospective moment to look and see what worked, what didn't, what felt good, and what you want to carry forward. So that's a really big thing, is like, don't think just because something was a closed door doesn't mean you didn't gain such valuable experiences that it's going to serve you the rest of your life. Think about that. If you're like in this closed door situation, maybe even make a list and light a candle or pour yourself some tea tonight and write a list of all the things that you gained from that experience, that without it, you could have never been where you are today. You could never have the clarity or the confidence or the self-trust or self-love. You could never have the conviction of how things will be going forward. And so really, in some way, that closed door served you because it was still such a worthwhile experience of teaching you all those things that you can carry with you through the next open door when you see it. So that's another thing I love to remember. And on the same vein, you also learn a lot about what you like or don't through the closed doors. So maybe it's the situation that's different from business. Maybe it's like a relationship and you feel this loss because a relationship that you loved didn't turn into what you wanted it to be. And if so, I'm really sorry for that. And I know it's hard. It's easier said than done to look back with fondness at those experiences, especially when they're still fresh. But if there's any part of you that can, maybe look at that closed door and think about what you learned about what you like or you don't for that next future relationship. Oftentimes it's in our heartbreaks that we learn so much about ourselves and what we want going forward, and what we will accept going forward, and what our boundaries need to be, and what we would do differently. And so those closed doors have a lot of wisdom behind them. And if you can extract that out, sometimes it helps them to feel not as heavy and solid and like forbidden of a door, because you take what you need to from it. And again, you can carry that with you in the future. One question that I often receive on this topic is like, how do you tell if a door is closed versus just something that you should just keep pushing harder at? One way that I can always tell is if I would keep creating whatever I'm creating, building the business, writing the book, launching the podcast, sharing the message, even if it never actually, quote unquote, worked. right? If it never led to the success I'm dreaming of or bigger outcome, would I still do the work? That's a way for me that I know I'm on the right path. So for example, I've had business like closed doors. They felt like things that, I would sell and no one would buy. I've had that experience before. You do a whole like promotion strategy and everything, and then no one buys. And I've had that. And I've had those moments where you think, okay, do I just need to keep pushing? Like, is this something where I just need to work harder and try harder? Or is this life speaking to me and saying this is maybe a closed door? And for me, the way I know is I just get honest with myself about like, if this never ever worked, do you believe in this enough to keep sharing it? Is it something that you would just want to share because you believe this is something that needs to be out there and someone somewhere needs to hear it? Or are you doing it for the other reasons and you're kind of like going through the motions to get to this other success or accolade or thing that you want? That's kind of how I know whether it's a no from like the universe or whether it's just something I need to put more time into. So the contrast would be like my book. I would have written that book if it never sold a single copy. I really believe in the message. It was something I dreamt of doing. And so for me, it didn't matter if that was ever a closed door or not, because it was just something I felt so deeply and believed in doing and putting out there. And so maybe for you, I just share those examples to give you some ideas and reference points to think in your own situation. If you're coming up against something that feels like a closed door and you're wondering, is this something I just need to put more time and energy into? Or is this life saying, go another direction, redirection is protection, go another way? That might be a way you ask yourself, like, would I do this thing if no one ever saw it? No one ever congratulated me on it. I never received $1 from it. It never became anything bigger. Would I still want to show up every day doing this because I believe in it? If you have this deep feeling of, yes, I would, then I think it's one of those things that you would want to do regardless and just keep going and pouring more time into it, and eventually it will work. If you don't get that gut sense that you care enough about it, it may be life reflecting that back to you through this closed door and actually giving you a gift so you can go another direction. I've had that before, so, just want to share that in case any of you are running up against that too. I'll leave you with a few last little thoughts on this. One quote that I love is, remember that sometimes not getting what you want is a wonderful stroke of luck. That quote has helped me through so many situations, heartbreaks or denials or rejections or just things that I thought, I really want this thing. And then I have to remember sometimes not getting what I want is a wonderful stroke of luck. I just can't see why yet, but come around to a few years later, and I usually do. And then I think I'm going to do a whole nother podcast episode on this, but this concept of the universe could also just be rearranging things to fulfill the dream that you asked for. So just because you can't see what you want being fulfilled in the certain way you think it should be, doesn't mean that life hasn't heard your prayer, that God hasn't listened to what you want, and hasn't said, absolutely, I love that for you, but I'm going to need to rearrange a few things and close a few doors over here to get you to that path later on. So I try and remember that too, that I just kind of have limited perspective from, where I'm at and being a human, and I can't always see the bigger picture of how synchronicities and life and relationships and connections and experiences will work together to get me my dream as I go forward and do what I can do to make it happen. And so I have to trust that if this seems like there's a closed door and I don't know why, that maybe there is some bigger purpose behind it, and it is life actually trying to give me the dream that I desire, but I'm just going to need to be rerouted a little bit in order to actually get that thing that I want so bad, and just can't see how it's all going to unfold from my vantage point. So those are all things that really help me keep perspective and keep calm when the doors are closing. Again, it's remembering that redirection is protection, number one. Number two, you can have your list, or you can have the miracles and surprises that God has planned for you. Number three, that one thing often leads to the next thing, and you gain so much from an experience and even from a closed door that helps the next open door. Number four, you'll learn a lot about what you like and what you don't from those closed doors, and you can bring those again with you, carry them through to the open opportunity or open door. And that you can kind of tell the difference in your soul. And sometimes the universe is rearranging things to fulfill that dream that you have. You just can't see it. When it all feels like it's swirling around and falling apart, it might just be rearranging into something better. I hope that those encourage you as well. I don't know your situation, but whether it's in business, whether it's in a relationship, whether it's health news that you heard, I'm really thinking of you, and I hope that this helps just give you that perspective that maybe this closed door is for some bigger purpose. I hope it is, and I hope in a matter of just a small amount of time, you will also be able to see it as well, and you will be on your way to something so much better than you could have dreamed. Thank you so much for listening in. If you love this episode, there are 2 things that would be so helpful to me and this podcast. One, if you haven't yet, is to leave a review. These take less than a minute, but help get this podcast into the ears of more listeners and women it can uplift. Or if you've already left a review, share this episode on Instagram and tag me at @HiJessicaJohnson so I can personally thank you and reshare. Thank you for being here, and I will see you again next week.